Namaste and welcome to the second season of Future Fit Corporates. My name is Bhavana Issar and I'm the founder CEO of Caregiver Saathi. In this season, we are going global and shifting the narrative. Caregiving is not a career obstacle or something that organizations must accommodate. It's a leadership accelerator. And through candid conversations with corporate leaders, consultants, and change makers, we explore how caregiving shapes resilience, empathy, and innovation. Let's discover what it truly takes to build workplaces that don't just include caregivers, but recognize that caregiving experience is an asset. Because the future of work is not just tech, female, or inclusive, it's compassionate, it's innovative, and therefore caregiver friendly. Welcome to Future Fit Corporates. Welcome to everyone to Future Fit Corporates. Future Fit Corporates, as you are aware, is an initiative aimed at fostering caregiver-friendly workplaces and envisioning a future-ready corporate culture. Why is this important? It is important that workplaces continue to invest in people and nurture success. And in today's dynamic corporate landscape, the success of an organization is deeply, intricately tied to the well-being and success of not just customers, but its workforce. Future Fit Corporates is an initiative aimed at fostering resilient, innovative, and perhaps caregiver-friendly workplaces that envision a future-ready corporate culture. This initiative seeks to facilitate meaningful conversations between CEOs, leaders, thought leaders, HR heads through video interviews, podcasts, and written responses. Our goal is to explore, discuss, and champion the integration of employee performance, well-being into the very fabric of corporate strategy. I'm delighted today to have with me as guest A.S. Ramchandar, fondly called Ram, someone who has more than 40 years of experience in strategic marketing, P&L management, business strategy, and sales. Currently a senior advisor to McKinsey's in an independent consulting role and advising companies across the world on growth, strategic marketing, new market entries, and strategic customer management. His last corporate role was the global CMO and VP of Strategic Customers for Castrol, also an organization where I had the chance to work with Ram closely, and I have to say was definitely a very delightful part of my career. At the time, leading a team of over 400 plus global marketing and sales professionals around the world. The joke among some of us is that the whole world of lubricants led today are prodigies or people that have learned from Ram. So he has served in India, Asia Pacific region, and UK, and now divides his time between London and Singapore. Ram has a strong passion for teaching and coaching and serves on the advisory board at Durham University Business School and offers short lecture modules on personal branding, brand management, and marketing. Ram and I have had multiple conversations, not just about Caregiver Saathi, but about many things. And it is my delight, Ram, today that we will be having this very public conversation and exploring this world that I gave the context to. Thank you.
So Bhavna, thank you so much. That was too flattering an introduction. And while I've been a huge fan of what you have been doing, I can say very openly on this platform that I am an admirer, both of the initiative and the energy behind the initiative that is Bhavna. So really looking forward to this conversation. And there are, I've been associated from a learning point of view from what Caregiver Saathi has been doing, but I really like and enjoy connecting the dots as we speak to the future fit organizations and corporate
Mm.
strategy. So looking forward to that, Bhavna. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. It has taken us some time to get together
Yes.
for this conversation. And like all good things that take some time, we are finally here. I would like for you, Ram, to articulate your intention for this conversation today and tell us a little bit about how you relate with caregivers, caregiving, and caregiver Saathi.
Thanks. I mean, I think it's a interesting question that you ask because my intention today, I don't think there's anything profound. I just want to learn. I want to learn from what others have been talking about, thinking about in this particular space, in this
Mm,
conversation, and also check out some of my thoughts and perceptions on how this whole area of caregiving is evolving and how it connects to the world of corporate strategy,
mm.
corporations in general, and the future of the workplace. So I guess it's about just having a conversation, having a chat, and learning. I think that's my intention for the day.
That's fantastic. An exploratory conversation is great. It lends itself to new possibilities. And I have enjoyed many a conversation with you on that, sometimes philosophical and sometimes very instructive. And I'd like for you to look back at your career, very wide and very, you've come across a variety of people in your career. How have you seen the shape of employees bringing the idea of their caregiving responsibilities across men and women over the years to the workplace?
I think it's a fascinating question because there are multiple things happening in this area. The first thing is what I would call as the demographic uh, time bomb, so to speak,
Mm,
of
mm,
a lot of us who joined the workforce sometime in the 80s and the 90s, basically the
mm,
boomer and the Gen X generation. And all of us are beginning to see the implication of caregiving in our personal
mm,
lives. And
mm.
as leaders, we're beginning to observe the impact of the whole caregiving agenda that it's happening on the employee's mind and in a corporation. And therefore, the force it's beginning to sort of exert in people's decision making, whether it is
Yeah.
men or women. So I think it's quite fascinating. And one thing I've observed is when in my early parts of my life, I think this was a topic which was kept at home. So
Mm,
when you walked into the office, you didn't talk about caregiving to elders. Of course, if you had a very close friend or a very close colleague, you might share a confidence or two. But what was going on at home stayed at home. Okay. There was a great reluctance on the part of the employee to bring it into the workplace. And I don't think, frankly, when I was in my 20s and 30s, there was an openness by the corporations and leadership in
yeah.
general to discuss these sort of things in the office. So there was a clear separation of the office and the personal space.
Yeah.
And caregiving was even, let's say, one parda behind the
Mm,
normal personal stuff like marriage and
that's right.
children, which was a little bit more acceptable to have conversations on. So that was the environment. And as we grew up and evolved in this in leadership roles across the world, I was seeing and sensing that people were much more open in bringing
Yeah.
some of these concerns into the workplace. So in
Yeah.
the various sort of informal and formal chat sessions that used to happen, whether it was in my old company or in companies of friends and other people,
Yes.
there is an open, there was almost a blooming of the openness of these topics in the workplace. But it stayed there. It was much more about employee to employee sharing and maybe employee to, let's say, an understanding manager, okay, having these conversations. But I don't think there was any uh, concentrated or clear corporate effort around this whole space. So one can see like the development of the computer, the internet, the mobile phone, and then the emergence of artificial intelligence. I mean, in our careers, we
Yeah.
have seen this whole journey.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's not as dramatic, but I think attitudes of people to personal lives of employees, I think, have gone a remarkable transformation. So that's my reflection.
And as you were speaking, Ram, and you and I have spoken about this before, but I am just going to bring this back. I was taken back to the Castrol India's TKP office where I joined, and you and I used to work together. And I was at that time a mother of a little
Hmm.
girl. And we spoke about this that I was responsible for HR, and we would have meetings. And once I remember being offered that you could go home and we can. It's time for you to go home, and why don't we have? We will talk about this tomorrow. Even the role of a leader on whether you are offering a flexibility or accommodation seems to have changed. Sometimes we do things because we believe that's in the best interest. And I remember having this conversation with you about saying that, do you recollect this conversation, which was
Yep.
that, you were
Yep.
offering me flexibility, but
Flexibility.
I may
Absolutely.
have
Yes.
you received it like you don't want me to be in the decision making room. I'd like for you to talk about that from your point of view, because things are changing. And while we or the new generation expects more, it is equally important for us to understand the context where decision makers are coming from. So,
I mean, I do recollect some of those conversations, and it was not just you, Bhavna. There were a few more individuals going
yes,
through uh, situations in their home and family
yes,
lives which called for
yes,
flexibility on from their work practice point of
yes.
view, and
Mm,
it was just a question of doing the right thing both for the employee
mm,
as well as the company. And I'm saying it in all seriousness because it is not purely employee welfare. It is about
yes,
doing what is right for the employee
yes,
as well as doing what is right for the corporation at that point in time. And I
yes.
think it was just I mean, the background, the reason why I sort of stepped into that space was I had gone through one of those long leadership development programs that we used to get sponsored for. And one particular thing stuck in my mind. It was the
Mm,
whole concept of background conversations. Okay.
okay.
And so, I mean, you know the story very well, but what conversation is going on in the back of the mind of the individual that will prevent that person being fully present? Okay.
Mm,
Therefore, a physical presence, but a mental distraction or an absence is an absence. Okay. So if once you put that into the equation on working this problem, then you realize that if somebody is having a background conversation about their child, about their mother, about something else going on, it's okay to step out, take some time, sort it out, and come back 100%. So that was the uh, almost the rational reason why we went through those changes at that point in time. And I must confess in this conversation that it was always not only the what we call as employee welfare. It was about what is
yeah.
right for the employee as well as what's right for the company at that point in
Yeah, the proverbial elephant in the room, or the background conversation that can dim one's performance, is a great point,
time.
because there is a very interesting study that BCG did, which says that employees that are going to be responsible for caregiving are likely to be so distracted that it is going to bring down their productivity very significantly. And of course, it shows up differently for women and it shows up differently
Yes.
for men.
I think the gender question is quite interesting because traditional role modeling would have put the accountability and the responsibility for caregiving squarely at the doorstep of the women folk and the women
Mm,
employees in the organization, and some unintended consequences like the what you call as a leakage on the way to the CXO table or the boardroom, where
yeah.
where some consequences. However, I think if you step back and as a male, and when I look at it, okay,
Mm,
I think the pressure or the what's happening in your mind on caregiving, okay, I don't think is gender specific. The workload may in the past have been a little bit more skewed to the
mm,
female. However, the concern, the mental pressure, the sort of thoughts about how to organize it, I think
mm,
were family. I think,
mm,
for example, when my father-in-law was ill and he had
mm,
to go through a period of care giving, it was both my wife and I. Okay, she is and was a very successful entrepreneur, and we both had to make joint decisions on how to do the care. So it was not her responsibility to do that. It was a collective responsibility. And at that point in time, we were in different locations. I was in Mumbai and she was in Chennai. So we had to sort of
right.
trade off responsibilities and accountabilities. But I realized that I was equally, if not uh, desperately concerned about the welfare of my
Mm,
father-in-law. So I think the I think that what has happened in the last 15, 20 years, I think the not only the concern and pressure or the influence of caregiving on your mindset, it's moved from being equally responsible in mental terms to
mm,
being also equally committed and responsible in physical terms. I think that's the change that has happened. Now, I find many places where we see the men folk and the women folk take time out for care
yeah.
duties. It's still a bit biased, I must say that. Okay, but it is changing, I think, in the right direction.
For sure. Usually the refrain for that is that, women have to take the time off for childbirth, or perhaps women are better at caregiving, which of course is debatable. But I would like to talk about the fact that there was a very significant period where the sales and marketing team that you were heading at India and then later globally had a bias that for the lubricant industry, the space, you need men who were chemical engineers, who can do this job better. And then you definitely witnessed, not just witnessed, you led some of the initiatives around shifting that mix over time. And we know that there have been now many women heading marketing, and not just in India but globally. And you would have definitely seen that, contributed to that. And how has that been different or not? I'd like for you to take us through that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one because I don't think there were two reasons or two uh, paths in my decision making on that
Hmm.
particular topic. One was intensely personal,
Hmm.
and the other one was very corporate. Okay,
Okay.
let's start with the company and the corporation. I think both BP as a corporate entity and Castrol India as a company were super leaning in into the
Hmm.
concept of workplace diversity, particularly
Hmm.
women in the sales and marketing team. It was not too difficult to achieve a diversity ratio at an overall level. Okay,
That's
and
right.
but I think we were constantly sort of encouraged, if I can use that word, to get the balance right in the
Right.
particularly the frontline functions of sales and manufacturing,
Yeah.
which was what traditional role models didn't exist as often. So there was this corporate push and also a strong level of encouragement and led by some fantastic role modeling by individuals globally. So that was the corporate side of it. Personally, I have two cases which convinced me that there is only one way in this conversation. One was my wife, okay, and I mean, as you know her very well, she's a computer engineer and very successful entrepreneur. She used to manage over 1,000 sort of students, and while driving the education excellence in computer education. And I realized from that very personal study, okay, that effectiveness has very little to do with gender. The second example I would give was the my first job as a area sales manager in my
Mm,
first company in Andhra Pradesh. I used to
mhm.
work for Goodlas Nerolac in those days, currently Kansai Paints, and and my competitor was Asian Paints. And we
Right.
had a branch manager from Asian Paints who was a woman. I must regret to say I don't remember the name now, but
Okay.
she was a whirlwind. Okay,
Gotcha.
in terms of the market work, and I used to be proud that I could really really describe each and every market in the state very accurately. I knew all the dealers at that point in time, and I visited the market at least 10, 12, 15 days a month. So it was intense work. And you know what, Bhavna? This woman was everywhere, either just ahead of me or just behind me. And I mean, I can't use some of the language on a podcast, but I got really kicked, okay, in terms of the experience, in terms of somebody who's really as good, if not better, in what frontline sales management was in those days. That was the late 80s. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So
I love the story.
that sh- that that shaped me completely in saying, okay, there is no barrier.
No,
Okay.
very good.
Okay, which comes in the way of diverse teams, particularly women, and in this category, in the what we used to think originally as the dirty category, okay,
Mm,
you have to go and work with literally with dirty hands, with mechanics and that sort of trade. We found in the Castrol experience, we had had one batch of, if I remember right, 20 sales trainees who were all women.
100.
Okay, and
100 sales.
no, the first batch was 20.
First batch
Okay.
20,
Okay.
then 100 sales
So,
trainees. Yes.
so that sort of proved to the industry at that point of time that
Yes.
I mean, even at that front line, even with the so-called dirty trade, working with mechanics and the workshops and stuff like that, I mean, they were really, really good. So, and I've seen some of them really grow and do very
Yes.
senior jobs today in not only the Castrol world, but in other companies.
That's true. That is true. It is definitely a highlight, something that gives me incredible joy. And I recently bumped into Rachna, who was
Mhm.
in my team, and we had yet another great conversation about this, and how hard it was to make a compelling case for a critical mass, because I think any organization that wishes to change cannot do this by bringing in, a couple of women in the
Yeah,
organization. It's
absolutely. You need to have
hard.
critical mass. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fully realized that if one or two, they get just sort of marginalized, forgotten, and ignored. Whereas if you have a
Yeah.
Sena, okay, then it makes real. And similarly, I mean, this is India story. One of my other colleagues in the Castrol world, a gentleman called Paul Turner, he used to run the
Mm,
China business for Castrol,
mm,
and he did exactly the same. I mean, he
right.
inducted almost a army of women into frontline sales, and actually it was Chinese name titled as an army. Okay, so
Ah,
it gave them a sense of energy and purpose, and they almost had an internal women's network which said, how do we beat the guys in terms of sales performance? Okay, so it was all a lot of fun, but also it made a point very, very clear that women
yes.
make a huge difference.
Yes. I think what was also important from a organization change standpoint, the way that I remember it, was not just, things like organization performance and that, whether there's a gender difference or whether you can have a little sense of play around this or not, but it is really taking a step back and changing how we do work or business. So I quote this very often that it was not just about bringing women in the sales team, but also probably having conversations with distributors and saying, listen, we now need to have
Mm.
restrooms that are different. Or, we need to have conversations that are going to be different. And we do have safety standards and we will have, other things to balance. And it is going to be annoying for the managers because there will be additional work, but this is the right thing to do. So I want you to give us a peek into some of the resistance or some of the difficult conversations you may have had to have with the men when women were being introduced in these traditional roles. So the conversations that you can't openly resist this, but it exists.
Yeah, that's true. But before I get into the resistance part, I should get into the advocates part. Okay.
Okay.
Apart from yourself, Matangi, and a few people who
Yes.
were active advocates, I think the leadership team of Castrol at that point of time, whether it is Adnan or Amish or any of the people around the leadership team
Yes.
table, they were all huge, huge sort of leaders
Yes.
in this particular space.
That's
But I
true.
must say, the late Naveen Kshatriya was a
Yes.
true inspiration in this area. And remember that he is and was one generation before us. And even with that, he had the wisdom, maturity, and the willingness to take on, if I can use that word, the world in this particular
Yeah.
area. So to be honest, I got huge amount of air cover from Naveen to have the tough
Yes.
conversations. Okay. Now coming on to the resistance, I don't think there was serious. Uh, I would say I don't think there was any serious resistance from a willingness point of view. I think the
Right.
resistance from all the team members whom I had this conversation with was about their perceived or about their doubts about the effectiveness of the move. So
Hmm.
I must say that uh, they probably did not have the same level of conviction that a few of
Hmm.
us had about the effectiveness of that. Forget about the
Hmm.
gender balance, etc., etc. Will it work? Is
Hmm.
will it get my sales numbers? Was the
Hmm.
primary concern rather than I don't want women in this team.
That's right.
So,
That's
so
right.
once the effectiveness was proven, I think a
Hmm.
lot of people just shifted very
Yeah.
fast. And
Yeah.
again, I must say, give credit to my team. There were some very senior sales leaders. All of them leaned in terms of saying, okay, I'm not sure, Ram, but let's have a go. Let's try. Okay. So I must
Yeah.
compliment them for the willingness and the openness to consider. And because if they had said no, boss, it's not going to work type of thing, I mean,
It
it
would be
it
so
uh,
hard.
it would be difficult to make it work. So
That's
I
right.
was pushing on a semi-open door. Okay, but I think the conversations were more about effectiveness rather than the desire of it.
But I wouldn't have expected you not to acknowledge just your, your colleagues, your and Naveen or your team members. Um, but I would want you to also comment on how you saw this across the region. So it was initially India, but then it was across Asia Pacific, and then you saw it globally. What did you see were, similarities or dissimilarities or trends?
I think I talked to earlier in the conversation we spoke about the China example.
Yes.
I think the openness of women in workforce in general and
Right.
sales in particular and senior roles in particular
Yeah.
was much more open in the rest of Asia Pacific, with the
Mm.
possible exception of Japan. Okay.
Okay.
And if you take China, if you take Vietnam, if you take Thailand, okay,
Mm,
many of our people, okay, senior leaders and salespeople were women. There were no barriers, and
mm,
we could come across some outstanding women leaders in these
mm,
markets. And in fact, the interesting tidbit here is that the best and most celebrated distributor in Vietnam was a woman. So it's not only about company sales team, but also in the
mm,
world of distribution business, which is expected to be very tough, et cetera, et cetera. We found a lot of women entrepreneurs in the Southeast Asian region. So very much sort of more evolved, if I can say that, what at that point in time compared to what India was. And the Western
yeah,
world had a completely different dynamic. It was not about, I think, being discriminatory, okay, was
mm,
legally an issue. Okay, so organizations had very hard-coded rules,
mm,
practices, and principles on how to
mm,
conduct these things. And of course, the society having become a lot more dual income in the last 50, 60 years in the Western world, I think there was a lot more balance and equality was pretty much taken for granted. So in all
mm,
the BP and Castrol operations globally, with the except, there'll always be some outliers, some specific countries or specific markets, etc. But in general, I think it was
mm,
quite well balanced. And I found that a lot also depended on the conviction of the leadership team in those markets. While the socio-economic environment might have been very positive, okay,
mm,
a good or a bad leadership team, bad in the sense of diversity, could sort of set you back quite a bit. So we've seen the
yeah,
examples. I don't want to obviously quote specific countries or names, but we saw examples of that. People who didn't believe it, and therefore it didn't happen, even though the
yeah.
environment was very conducive and friendly for that. So I think
But
it's a
that's very
combination of
interesting.
environment as well as leadership for making this happen.
I find that very interesting, and I'd like to take our conversation to you. You know, you were leading the marketing function, which is stereotypically associated with innovation. And you know, you're expected to lead the organization into the future, and not just in terms of the brand and therefore the value that the organization is making for its shareholders, but that in some way leads the culture of the organization and the rest of the organization as well, is the way that I imagine it. So if you were to look at innovation in an organization and doing it right by the customers, then how has uh, working with diversity in general and specifically gender diversity been your experience? Can you help us draw some lines, connect some dots?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the moment you put the context of the future and
Yeah.
the task at hand is innovation and preparing for the future. The way we approached it was, I think our team should reflect our customer base
Mm-hmm.
broadly. Okay. So as long as our team reflects our customer base, whether it is gender or ethnicity or even attitudinal diversity, then
Mm,
we tend to get the best soup of people in the organization, which is most conducive to creating superior customer and consumer insights, which then translates to outstanding innovation. That's the sort of belief system we grew up with. And therefore,
mm,
while there was always this corporate thing about what is the gender balance in your team, in your organization, etc., our focus was always get the best person for the job. Don't definitely negatively discriminate either way. Okay.
mm,
And BP had some fantastic practices in terms of ensuring that it was uh, merit based choices, but
mm,
giving everybody an equal chance. It was more like facilitation of equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That was a
Mhm.
philosophy almost driving some of these conversations. Now, once you keep that the strategy and philosophy aside, in terms of our practical experience, uh, there were parts of the marketing organizations where we used to struggle to find a male candidate. There was
Mhm.
gender
Mhm.
imbalance on the other side, but
As well.
there were no regrets because that team was the best team. Okay. And that also to some extent gave us the ability to say that this particular role means this person, this guy is the best guy. Okay. And therefore we will go with him because our track record and our organization setup was so clearly balanced that nobody could accuse or even raise the question of are you being discriminatory or something like that. So I think it was driven by belief of diversity, not just gender, but gender, ethnicity, and attitude and mindset. So that combination is what we believed gave us an outstanding innovation-led marketing team.
What came to my mind immediately as you were describing that was a conversation that you and I had at a time for the marketing team in Castrol, India, where you said times are changing. And this was just before the e-commerce
Hmm.
digital marketing boom. And you said, you know what, we in our marketing team need one of those young people who do a lot of blogging and who do a lot of internet and that person and that is the person we need to have in our team and this is how it will be. And at that time it wasn't evident how that person would add to or shape not just the team but business, but it was important to bring her in so that everybody could learn from her as well. I
Yep.
don't know if you recollect this conversation.
Yeah, yeah, I recollect the conversation and the person. And we had similar sort of, I had a similar experience across the world with that. Okay.
Right.
And bringing in, again, it was not just about gender, but bringing in disruptive uh,
Yes.
personalities and thinking, which may not make immediate sense to the business at hand, but will certainly change the conversation in the organization. We tried to practice it systematically, and sometimes we were successful and sometimes we were not, but because some individuals created tissue rejection. They were
Yes.
so different that the system sort of
Yes.
rejected them, but some made dramatic interventions and changed the course of the company. So I've seen both, and it's
Yes.
been a fascinating journey. But I must say, it is not. Again, I repeat this, Bhavana. It was not just gender. It was about
Yes.
modernity, a different thinking, contemporariness in the way you approach the
Yes.
market. I think those were, and a lot of them happen to be women who are really good at that sort of
That's right.
area, and it worked
That's right.
both ways for us. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're continuously pointing that diversity is about the diversity of thought, and it is not just about men and women. And you could have actually more women in the workforce who think just like other men in the organization. So
Mm.
then that's not really diversity.
Diversity.
So it's
Mm.
very important for leaders to go after certain metrics like, okay, how many women do you have? But really, are you getting the disruption? Now, I'm very keen to talk to you about the disruption
Mhm.
because I suppose disruption is critical or essential for innovation, but disruption brings with it all kinds of adjacent challenges, especially for the leader. Tissue rejection being just one of them. But just coping with the disruption or the difficulty or a different way of approaching things. So, could you, to those of us who will be listening to this conversation as leaders, help unpack the leadership challenge of healthy disruption and innovation that a leader has to continuously navigate?
I mean, it's a big topic, and I don't know whether we can do justice to that sort of stuff. And not that I claim that I know a lot about this. It's only lived experience and what I
Okay.
have gone through. Okay. I,
Yes.
I think the word I would look for in that particular thing for leaders like me who are going through the journey is ability to manage ambiguity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a core sort of capability, if I can use that word, because
Yeah.
when you bring in disruptive and using it in the most positive sense, talent,
Yes.
people, practices, and
Yes.
technologies, all of that. Disruption is not just people, it can be created from any angle. I think there is bound to be some element of negative impact on the immediate. Okay, there is going to
Okay.
be a challenge to short-term performance
Mm.
or even short-term harmony in the team. Or
Yes.
these things are bound to happen. So it's a question of being able to say, okay, that I know that's going to happen. I
Mm.
plan for it. I have more intense conversations with the individual and the team together and separately to
Yeah.
constantly manage that tension. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that to me, and be willing to accept that there will be challenges. Okay. If you say, okay, I want to bring in disruptive people, disruptive technologies, disruptive practices, I don't want anything to happen to my current month's performance, volume, market share, etc., etc. I know there is an intense pressure in today's corporate world about quarterly deliverables, monthly performance. Absolutely, we all have gone through it, and so therefore you have to plan around it. So, and therefore, if you expect some disruption, then plan elsewhere to counter it. Okay. So, and
Great point.
those are the things which we need to work on. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, um, having conversations, okay, and being open about what you want and what you believe in, and
Mm.
engaging both the individual in this case as well as the team, I think is
Mm.
critical. The more and more conversations people have, you realize that that person is just a person. Okay, just have slightly different thinking or a different attitude. And I still remember one of my global leadership team meetings when we had this
Mm.
conversation. And so we had what we call as a round table without a table type
Mm.
discussion, where each of us uh, shared our sort of stories, the
Mm.
personal story, not the CV. And as part of the storytelling, we talked about our individual vulnerabilities, okay, which was
Mm.
brilliantly facilitated by one of the consultants we used to work with. And that brought to life that, and we discovered the person whom we thought was going to be most disruptive was
Mm.
actually a double PhD in something and could go and do some amazing things. Then suddenly the team started looking at the individual very differently, and
Yeah.
engineering those moments and conversations, I think creates more acceptance. Once the team sort of puts its
Mm.
arm around the disruption, then you can sort it, and you can in fact make it work better for the entire organization. So that was one learning I had. Get the people together, let the have the conversations, talk about personal vulnerabilities, and share stuff which you normally wouldn't share. Then I think it opens up the connections.
Mm. Um, my memories of being a part of the sales and marketing leadership team at Castrol India include such conversations.
Mhm.
They include a very nice, warm, fuzzy feeling of being in it together. And as somebody who was leading that team, and you know, all of us were people who had a strong mind of our own,
Yep, yep.
and who who were disruptive and whatever in our own ways. And you, as the leader who was the sutradhar for all of us, would have had many a moment of thinking back and saying, I just wish all this set of people would simply listen to me and not do their own thing.
Actually, I would be lying if I said I didn't have those. moments. Sometimes it
Yes,
was like herding not cats but tigers. Okay.
for
So,
sure.
but then we realized that very soon that once the team got to know each other, started rating and liking the individual
Yeah,
differences, and also had a sense of common purpose. So once you
yeah,
know that customer, that competitor, that market is a sort of common prey, if I can use a hunting analogy, then the team became a pride of lions. No
yeah,
pun, no pun intended here, actually. Okay. So and
yeah,
then the hunting was in full swing, and then the team
yeah.
worked brilliantly. So I think, and I must not claim credit. I think the team itself was like that, and they were all at, and I still recall one of the senior leaders of the company, the head of downstream
Mm,
and lubricants in those days. When he visited India, I had a personal sort of tragedy, and I had to leave him halfway during his trip
mm,
and go back
mm,
to Chennai for a funeral. And later, about 8 months later, I met this gentleman in the conference, and he said, "Ram, you left the other day, and I thought the team will just crumble because you were holding it together. But you know what I realized, and I took it as one of the best compliments I had in my India life. That you know what? Then I realized when I talked to the team the next day, Naveen had stepped back and he was letting the team do the talking, the presentations, etc., etc. And any one of them could have been in your job. Okay, so and that means that the team here is intensely strong, and that is testimony for what the culture in Castrol was in terms of creating very strong leadership teams. So that is a fond memory. And again, it shows that once the team comes together, I mean, they all step up and I mean, show themselves of such quality that recognition and praise is automatic. I mean, so that was a good experience for me.
What I particularly love about that narrative is that while it's so important for leaders to be able to nurture future leaders and to be able to nurture leaders that that can step into their shoes anytime without a sense of insecurity, and yet have the pride and compassion of holding the team together.
Mhm.
I think the long association that you had with many leaders over time, you would have seen their personal journeys from very close. What I'd like for you to probably zoom in on is how has knowing people been in your experience a valuable way for you to nurture your leadership style, which according to me is one of the most compassionate ones, but also nurture future compassionate leaders. How has driving for professional excellence on one side, but knowing the person deeply worked for you? How do you see it?
I mean, I don't know whether I can give you a very conceptually rounded answer for that one. It's just what I went through. And
Yes.
I'm very happy to say that uh, all the people whom I worked with, whether it
Yes.
is line manager, my line managers, leaders, peers, and people who used to be organizationally reporting to me, I have relationships even today
That's true.
at a personal level, and like their families, the children, and so it sometimes has a risk of being seen as a sort of clique,
Hmm.
okay, in some contexts, but
Hmm.
the value of knowing people personally and understanding where they come from, their contexts, I
Hmm.
think is hugely value adding in terms of leadership. And I think that the trick is to understand when and where the line should be drawn. Okay,
Yeah.
there is a role which you play. You play the role of a leader, you play the role of the manager, you have certain corporate responsibilities. And
Yeah.
where does that come in the way sometimes? And when do you
Yeah.
draw the line? I think that's a tough one. Okay, because there's sometimes you have to do restructurings when you have to let people go who are very close to you. Okay,
Yes.
and it does happen. It has happened, and I think understanding and knowing that and being able to process it is probably one of the most difficult things I have to face. And it was difficult because I had to make those choices. Okay,
Yeah.
and therefore close helps in many ways, but it also puts a lot of emotional pressure on you when you are in difficult organizational circumstances. So yeah, seen both sides of the story.
Yeah, no, I suppose that is the challenge of compassionate leadership. One of the things that I am talking to leaders as I speak or explore the idea of, the whole being at the workplace, or therefore recognizing what our team members bring in holistically, is, this generation is going to have the longest caregiving experience than any generation before, given that
Hmm.
in our
Life
active working
lifespans.
lives, lifespans are longer. And in our active working life, we will probably have grandparents around, and we will probably have parents around, and we will also have children. And,
And
families are
maybe
smaller.
become grandparents ourselves. So
That's right. And working people, we will become parents and grandparents while still working. The age limit of retirement doesn't
it's
exist in
going
all
up.
countries, but is notional. And there are so many things that are going to impact. But can you give, even if it is anecdotal, some person story, life experience of how you believe somebody's personal experience of caregiving may have made them different people, leaders, um,
Interesting question, because
contributors?
I never thought about it like that. But all the people whom I worked with, or most people I've worked with, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, have had caregiving uh, responsibilities,
Mhm.
either physically or in terms of overall responsibility. And one thing which I've always discovered is that when you observe them during that process,
Mm,
and in some cases after, you realize there's a certain extra sense of calmness, okay,
mm,
which comes in because they've seen what is more important being in a more challenged place than the business world. So then they start balancing it a bit and saying, you know what, it's not always about the next grade or the next increment and how much more did I get compared to my colleague. Those conversations tend to reduce. They never go away fully. We're all human at the end of the day, but they tend to become a bit more nuanced and balanced. So I think the attitude to life changes as a result of active caregiving or even being responsible for it. That brings certain home truths in your head. And if you are responsible for caregiving today, then you
very
suddenly
interesting.
realize that you will be the recipient of caregiving in the next X years. And that brings home certain things to you. So I think emotional maturity is probably the word I would like to use. I think goes up, which I suspect has positive sort of implications for decision making. I don't know whether there is a direct personal case study which I can quote. And
Mm,
so personally, I lost my parents when I was very young, and so never had to go through a direct caregiving experience. But I see my mother-in-law today,
mm,
and we have the caregiving accountability and responsibility. I spent quite a bit of time with her, but to be honest, I moved on from traditional corporate leadership roles, so I
yes.
can't give you
exactly how it sort of impacts my leadership style. And for there are people whom I have made some observations, but that is too personal for them, so I don't know whether I should be discussing some of that here.
Fair enough. Um, and yeah, I mean, I can understand that some of these questions might be, little out of the blue, but knowing you, I know that you will come back a week later and say, I want to answer that. And that will be great.
No worries, we'll
So
do that. Yeah.
yes, for sure. What I'd like, Ram, for you to help us see your side of the world is the way that I have seen you or observed you. And what I remember is you're one of those leaders who's been very approachable. I know that you would literally park yourself in a conference room and have many people come by and talk to you, and sometimes talk to you very long. And my imagination is that many people, irrespective of levels, would talk to you about intensely personal challenges as well. And you have incredible bandwidth to hear it out, to make meaning, to make it pithy, and to play it back. Um, what has been your personal take about giving people so much space and being as approachable as you are? Because it must impact your efficiency.
True. I mean, yes and no, because the more time you spend with your team, you don't just talk personal stuff.
Mm,
Okay. And so, and if somebody really feels that they have to spend, let's say, an hour talking to the leader, there must be a need. Okay.
mm,
Because most people don't have the time to get into long conversations. Their deliverables are so acute, the pressure is so high that if they still want that 1 hour for a chat, it means it is important. Moments that matter is the language I would like to use. And when you're not there, okay, at the time with them, at that particular point in time when it matters to them, okay, then there is something in the relationship which sort of gives. So that was the sort of not logically articulated like I'm doing now, but that was what used to feel. If this person wants
mm,
this time, there must be some real reason. Why would they come and sit and chat for 1 hour? Okay. So that used to be the mindset. Now it did impact my time. So let me put it this way: it did impact my working hours or total hours. That is
that's
true. Okay. Whether it impacted my efficiency or productivity within the working time, I don't think so. But this will also work in a way. Okay. And that
true.
means one good detailed conversation with an individual, and if some mental sort of barrier is sorted in that person's mind, that means the productivity shoot up or increase in that individual could be more than paying off the time effect. So I don't know the answer in terms of whether you made a gain loss of time spent versus productivity gained later. No, but it was much more intuitive than that. I used to enjoy the conversations because it helped me uh, understand the team a lot better. And of course, I also have made choices when I say, you know what, bahut ho gaya, okay, okay, let's call it a day and let's connect maybe a month later type of things, but more of the former than the latter.
Yeah. No, and here's the thing. I have noticed when I speak with leaders that there are so many things that many do intuitively out of a force of their style or nature. They haven't really conceptualized their style. They haven't taken a step back and said, oh, I will do this actively. Not everybody
Mhm.
does everything very, strategically or actively. It's just a part of who they are, and some things stick out or really benefit. But for many people who listen into this and build or shape their orientation towards, for example, being caring or being compassionate, it is useful to know that as a leader, investing the time for a not so transactional conversation is worth it in the long run, because you're
Ab- Absolutely. I think there's always, like anything, Bhavna, in life, there's always a balance. But yes, all other things being equal, putting that extra bit of time with the team at a personal level, I think is super critical.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think those leadership lessons are sometimes very interesting for people to listen into and take. But I'd like for us to now look at
Okay.
how organizations are evolving, changing. We are in the world of AI. We are in the world of demographic shifts. We are in the world of uh, healthcare challenges, and sustainability challenges, so many things. Workplaces are definitely shifting. There are more gig workers. Generations are shifting. Uh, Clearly, you have some insights by being a parent as well, um, and being a consultant and being a teacher. Help us paint a picture of how you see organizations or workplaces evolve, but what's your wish for how workplaces would be, cultures would be?
It's one of those hugely fascinating topics because we talked about as careers, working life is getting longer, time and job, time you need
Yes,
to earn, and time at which you retire. All those are becoming longer. The other trend we're also seeing is that the duration in each job is coming down. So
yes,
you do not have. I don't want to use the word loyalty. I think it's not the right word. Uh, Long-term commitment to a particular employer. Okay,
yes,
that is reducing quite a bit. Now, by virtue of that, there is a certain amount of transactional nature which emerges in the relationship between the employer and the employee, and that is a it's I don't think it's a reversible trend. Okay.
hmm,
Okay. So that's one thing. That's one trend is very clear that the working life is longer, but the duration of each job or each part of your career is shorter. So now that implication of that trend is that your relationship is more transactional. I think
that's right.
A is to B, B is to C, a sort of logic link is there. The other thing I'm also beginning to see is the nature of the workplace is changing. Now there is this
Hmm.
deep battle going on, and I'm happy to say I'm sitting outside and watching it of the work from home, work from office. Okay, you
Yeah,
can see the pitched and a huge sort of philosophical battle going on in that space, and as ever the American corporate world has taken a position and the European world is slightly in a different place. And when I talk to, let's say, people in my daughter's generation, they almost expect it as a, I wouldn't say entitlement, as almost like part of the offer that I need to be able to work from home. Like that's a big trend is happening. So therefore, the workplace presence which created the interaction between the employer and the employee, the leader and the team, where you could sit down, talk, exchange stories. So you had all those moments of connection are reduced. Okay.
yes,
So if somebody is working 3 days from home or 2 days from home and 3 days in the office, now the office days packed with necessary face-to-face meetings. There's no time. And when people work from home, the organization thinks, sometimes mistakenly, that oh, they have anyway saved their travel commuting time. I'm sure they're working whatever their productive hours are, but there is a lot of time saving. I'm sure they're using it productively for all their home stuff. Okay, including the topic of the day, which is care. Okay,
yeah,
so I think that also has sort of, I won't say it is um, creating cracks in the accountability of the employer and the employee. That relationship is developing some cracks in the area of what do I have to give you and what do you have to give me. Okay, so
Yeah.
that is the second thing. The third is uncertainty. Okay, I was talking to an
Mm,
entrepreneur the other day, and she was telling me, I don't need employees. Okay, I've
mm,
got this company which is an AI company, and it can help me train 20 AI employees. Okay, four sales, two marketing, one HR, one legal, one accounting. I don't need
yeah.
employees. Okay, it's just
Yeah.
me and 20 AI. Okay, I said, how does that work? And she even demoed something to me. Then I said, okay, that is even more disruptive. Okay, okay.
I
So
want to know that separately, which we will do.
so that is even more frightening actually. And you say, "Okay, what is going to
Yeah.
happen here? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even have the courage to make a forecast, forget a prediction on this particular area. So there are too many forces impacting this fragile thing called the bonding between the employer and the employee. And it
Yeah.
is only going to become more entropic. It's only going to be
Yeah.
more chaotic.
Yeah.
So in that
Yeah.
context, okay, care and what the corporate world and the company thinks about care and part of its strategy, okay, is a challenging topic. So, like in the past, we used to have company insurance schemes for us, okay, and
Mm,
our parents, okay. Now,
mm,
slowly, the parents have been dropped out. So, okay,
mm,
it's us. And if you are going to be fractional employee many times, you will not probably have insurance even for yourself being provided by the company. You may get a subsidy and you buy your own. So I think the whole take charge of your own stuff, take personal responsibility, be it your healthcare, be it your tax planning, be it your
mm,
care requirements, deal with it. Okay, I'll give you money, or the company says, I'll give you subsidy or money or even some advice, but please take care of it. My job of doing this for you is over. So,
mm.
which is basically, you please do it yourself, I will support you, is probably the area where we are probably veering into in the next 10, 15 years, is my thinking.
That's fascinating and very unnerving because it kind of dislodges my hypotheses at a very fundamental level. But what else can I expect from you, Ram, to not just spin it on its head, but
You
make
asked
me
for it.
think?
You said, let us spin it on its head," and I said, "Okay." But
We did.
jokes apart, Bhavna, I think again, like any good marketing problem, okay,
Yeah,
this can be segmented. There will
yeah,
always be corporations which are providing huge services to or people and who have huge workforces who are committed.
mm,
Remember, even today, employment is a challenge in a country like India.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
where organized employment, if I remember my data somewhere, it's in the teens, not even in the
yeah, yeah.
higher level. So
20s,
when
yeah,
those things start growing, okay, there's a
yeah,
growth tailwind which
yeah,
uh, value propositions like Caregiver, Saathi will have. But I think
yeah,
if you're working at the cutting edge of something, there will also
yeah,
be heavy technology and social headwinds which you have to face. So it's just the balance. I wouldn't
yeah,
be discouraged because of some of these trends, but just be conscious about
yeah.
them.
No, well said. I think, and I think that's so. That's the strategic outlook that we
Mm,
are having this conversation regarding.
mm,
I'd like for you to, we can have a very long conversation and we can talk about this ad nauseum. But for today's conversation, I'd also like for you to step out of the corporate and look at the social landscape and
mhm.
say there is comment on this, that there is an observation, there is a trend of compassion deficit in the world that we are living in. We seem to be caring less. So when it comes to caring for other sentient beings, caring for the climate, knowing that compassion is required, but it is not easily accessible somehow. What do you think can be the role of organizations that are socially responsible, or industry bodies, or the larger social landscape? Because sometimes some problems are difficult to solve within the company, but probably corporates still have to play a role
Mhm.
uh, beyond the company, right? So maybe as a consortium, maybe in your social responsibility, maybe because um, certain social trends feed the kind of talent that will be available to us in the long run. So one can't say, I don't want to think about this, because it is going to inform how we will thrive as an organization. Again, too large a question.
Mhm. I'm honestly, Bhavna, I struggle with the concept of what individual corporations
Yeah.
can do.
Mm.
Because if you look at, okay, let me start with the first question. Do I see a reduction in compassion?
Yeah.
Okay. The answer is a qualified yes, because
Mm.
in my relations and in my friends, I see the way you would define care or compassion
Mm.
is probably the better word. Okay. In my and our lifetime, we used to have a particular definition of being seen as compassionate. That I think has gone down. I'm seeing a lot of uh, parents sort of living alone. Doesn't mean there is no love, but is there
Mm.
compassion to their daily needs, care? I don't know, because the children have pursued their ambitions and careers are elsewhere. And nothing wrong in that.
Mm.
That is what, as you say in the Bhagavad Gita, that is their dharma. They are following it. Okay. Now,
Mm.
in the bargain, because of international lives, okay,
Yeah.
and intercity life, because being in different places, the long distance relationship of a different order, okay, that is creating a care deficit. I'm sorry, compassion deficit. Now,
Yeah.
but simultaneously, I've spoken to the next gen in various contexts, and one thing they say, you can see a feeling that they're aware of this. And then, you know what? I
Yes.
wish I could do this. Okay.
Yes.
I hope I can do this. What can I do to overcome that gap? Okay. So
Right.
that gets converted as a desire to care,
Mm.
as opposed to a natural sort of compassion
Mm.
and being sort of with you, being attentive, being thoughtful, being empathetic. I'm just giving some
Mm.
adjectives for being compassionate. Instead, is getting to some extent displaced by how do I ensure you get some of those, if not everything. Okay.
That's right.
So,
Mm.
so I think compassion is going down, but I think the attention and love for care, okay, has gone up. And I've seen a very close personal example when my one of my uncles, he was suffering some sort of muscular degeneration disease, and the son and the daughter both live in the US, and
Mm.
you won't believe it. I mean, they had such a detailed care planning piece done that there were people around the clock, sort of all technology used, whether it is cameras or everything was in place, and they had a backup to backup to backup care providers sorted out, and they used to visit every month. I mean, come on, imagine doing the trip on economy
Wow.
class from
The
Atlanta to
US. Yeah.
Chennai. It's not easy, and they used to alternate every month. So I think there is a desire building, and again, this is only one. Maybe a data point is wrong or you cannot generalize, but I can see a bit more of that coming through. So care going up, compassion. I suspect it is a socio-economic or socio social environment changing. So that's the way I would look at it. Corporate world, I'm not too
Narendra?
sure, Bhavna. I don't think I'm not very clear at this stage until we see a value
Yeah,
proposition that
yeah,
integrates corporates' need for continuously improving performance, one hand, ensuring that there is a clear employer brand around caregiving as a value proposition for the employee,
yeah,
and then the employee seeing that as valuable. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Or necessary, even necessary. Okay, I don't want it. Can I have another 10,000 rupees in my take home? Okay, cash in hand. I don't know.
yeah,
I think we need to do a bit
yeah,
more research about employees' welcomeness around this sort of thing. Okay. I can
yeah,
imagine if you're in a large corporation, multiple year careers, moving between departments, I think this will make a huge impact in terms of the value proposition. But if you're
yeah.
in the gig economy, if you're in the AI world, if you're an entrepreneur, I'm not too sure.
Exactly. Exactly. So the hypothesis that, an individual wants a long-term career, or that even an employer wants an employee with a desire, such a desire, is up for testing. And therefore, it is only right that, as the last question of our conversation, I
Mhm.
ask you, what is your imagination or wish for an organization like Caregiver, Saathi?
Yeah. I'm very hopeful
Mm-hmm.
and I'm confident about the future of something like caregivers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me uh, explain that statement. There is there is a need. Okay, if I look at it
Mm-hmm.
from a outside in point of view, there is a felt need in the marketplace for better care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for all the reasons you talked about in terms of longer lifespans and increasing impact of lifestyle diseases and the age profiles of both the carers and the carees and the people who pay for it. I think if you take all this mix, I think there is a big need, which is
Mm-hmm.
a societal pain point, if I can use that word. So by that call, there has got to be a value proposition which makes sense for the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
So then if you start applying, I think here we have to be very cautious and conscious about segmenting this need very carefully and
Mm-hmm.
understand, is it a B2C proposition? Is it
Right.
an orchestrator aggregator proposition? Is
Mm-hmm.
it a B2B sales pitch or a
Mm-hmm.
B2 corporate sales pitch? So I think the business model could swing about a bit before it stabilizes. Therefore, from a
Yeah.
caregiver Sati point of view, I think rapid testing, doing very sharp, small, targeted sort of pilots would probably be a way forward. Now, the good thing about uh, the care world is that the need is high, the desire
Mm-hmm.
is increasing, and the ability
Mm-hmm.
to pay is also going up. So,
Yeah.
so if you look at the total addressable market, the language, it's increasing and increasing and increasing. So there is an opportunity. So I think the key is to find that value proposition and make it available to all the right people. So segmentation is critical, and the business model to ensure that is converted to both customer satisfaction, genuine care for people who need it, and obviously the other side of the story being the economic opportunity it avails. I think that's the balance, and I'm not saying anything dramatically new, but I'm confident, and it needs a bit of probably uh, aggressive imagination to
Mm-hmm.
bring it to life. But it has
Yeah.
got life, and I'm sure you and the team are probably got enough experience in the last couple of years to
Mm-hmm.
convert all those learnings into something which is a winning model in the marketplace. So I know if I have a care need in next 10, 15 years, I hope there is a caregiver sati proposition for somebody who will ensure that I get what I need. So with
Yeah.
that, I would like to say thank you for inviting me to this chat. I think we rambled on a bit at times, my fault entirely, but I guess there is. I'm sure you got whatever you wanted, and I really hope to keep the conversation going.
Thank you very much, Ram. I don't think you were rambling at all. I asked you very long, large questions. But thank you for playing along like you always do. I truly cherish your association. I have learned so much from you, not just working closely with you, but through this conversation as well. And I'm very, very grateful for your support and the generosity of your spirit, not just for this conversation, but so many conversations we've had. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching this episode of Future Fit Corporates. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't let it end here. Join the Future Fit Corporates Club or the FFC Club. Explore our full dossier and discover powerful blogs from our past speakers. Let's move beyond inclusion as a buzzword. Let's make diverse experiences, especially experiences of caring for others, caregiving, a leadership strength. Together, we can truly build not just a caring world, but future fit workplaces. Until next time, take care and let's keep the conversation on.